Hey guys, how's it going? It's been a while, as per usual. For today's video, I'm going to show you guys how you can sew a leotard without using a serger. I've definitely seen and heard people say, oh, I can't sew stretch things because I don't have a serger, and honestly, that's just silly. You can sew anything, well, I shouldn't say anything, but you can sew pretty much anything just using a sewing machine. I always like to say this before I jump into my tutorials, but I'm self-taught, so it's not like I went to school or anything like that for this. This is just sort of what I've learned through trial and error and I don't know, just what I think works best. So yeah, I'm gonna show you guys my technique for sewing a leotard without a serger, and I hope you guys enjoy, and if you do, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. But yeah, let's just jump into the tutorial. So to make this Leo, you're gonna need a few things. For starters, you're gonna need two different fabrics, one for your shell or main fabric and the other for lining. For my shell fabric, I'm gonna be using this red 4-way stretch spandex, and then for lining, I'm using a 4-way stretch knit blend. You'll also need your pattern, but you can really use any leotard pattern you want. For this tutorial, I'm using an old pattern that I made myself that's a tank style with an open back. So to get started, I'm gonna cut out two versions of my leotard, one from my shell fabric and the other from the lining fabric. So now that I've got my pattern pieces cut out, I'm gonna pin the shell pattern pieces together and the lining pattern pieces together with right sides facing each other. Now that everything's pinned in place, I'm gonna use a zigzag stitch to sew my seams together. The key is to use a zigzag that's wider than it is long to make sure you maintain good stretch within the seam. If you have a stitch that's not wide enough, the thread will snap when the seam isn't stretched, so between the two options you see here, you definitely want your stitch to look like the option on the right. So now I'm gonna take these over to my machine and stitch along the side seams, shoulder seams, and crotch seam. Okay, so now we need to piece these two leotards together. The whole goal with this is to hide the loose fabric from your seams in between both layers so that all you see from the outside of the Leo is a nice clean seam line. So in order to do that, I'm gonna take my shell leotard and leave it with the right side facing out, but I'm gonna take my lining leotard and turn it inside out. Now that the loose fabric of my seams on my lined version are facing out, I'm gonna insert it into the shell version so that the loose fabric of both are facing each other. Once you do this, the loose fabric from the seams of the shell version should be facing the inside, and the ones from the lining should be facing the outside. This is perfect because when we go to sew the layers together, the loose fabric will be squished together and hidden in between the layers so that all you see from the outside are nice finished seams. Next, I'm gonna pin around all of the edges where I'll be adding elastic, which is the neck hole, back hole, armholes, and leg holes. So now that both layers are pinned together and the loose seams are hidden within the layers, it's time to add elastic. For this part, I used 3/8 of an inch braided elastic, and all you're gonna do is take the elastic and lay it along the edge of the openings on the side of the lining. Then you're going to use a zigzag stitch to hold it in place, making sure the edges of the lining and the shell fabric line up with the edge of the elastic as you sew. If it's your first time making a leotard like this, you may find it easier to sew the layers together along all of the edges first before sewing in the elastic, but if you're confident, just go for it. Now that all of the elastic is sewn in place, all that's left to do is to finish off the openings with, you guessed it, another zigzag stitch. So for this part, you're just going to take the elastic and fold it under to the lining side of the leotard, and then you're going to zigzag right along the edge to enclose the elastic securely. When sewing your zigzag, you want to make sure one stitch goes into the elastic itself, and then the next goes just beyond the edge of the elastic to make sure the elastic is enclosed neatly and also so that it doesn't flip outwards. With all of the openings finished neatly with elastic, I just need to add a clasp to the neck hole to complete this leotard. All I did for this was take my slider clasp, slide the fabric through, folded the fabric under, and then used a straight stitch to hold it in place. And with that final step completed, this is how the leotard turned out. I hope you guys learned something helpful, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.